Okay, so firstly, it's been a mad few months for you. How have you processed your unlikely and remarkable rise to fame?
Well, I think that's the secret. I don't think I've processed any of it. I mean, it has been so incredibly busy that it really is. I've never really been. I don't practice what I preach. I think it's really important that we live in the moment, but I've never managed to find out how to do that. So this year has all been about no matter what you're doing in this moment, part of you is planning what's coming up next.
Yeah,
Makes sense. And so that when I work, before the pandemic, remember there was actually a time before the pandemic. I used to do training sessions or meetings, and I might have to travel an hour and a half to get there, get back. And I would use that time to process. Now that's all gone.
yeah.
We're working from home, so there's no journey from work to home, so there's no kind of separation of work and home. And so, yeah, I'm going to process this in about, I don't know, February next year, probably.
What was the moment you realised when all this was taking off?
Again, I can kind of talk about that, but I'm mindful when I talk about it, it now feels like I'm telling you the story. And again, it doesn't feel like a lived experience for me. So, the story is how a girlfriend colleague texted me to say, you're trending number 3. Now, trending, I didn't understand. I didn't even know I had a Twitter account. I can't remember the last time I'd ever used it. And I did that thing where, when people don't really understand what, I suppose you get this a lot, don't really understand what you said, but we do that kind of nervous, to make it go. And so that's exactly what I did on the text version of that. And then she comes back a bit later and says, even more excited text, you're trending number 1. And I thought, well, I better ask somebody about this. So I asked my son, on account of son by definition being a younger person. And he just said something like, don't worry about it, Mum, it'll be a mistake. So I thought, right, okay, put that one to bed, and never gave it another thought until the following morning, when you would have thought they'd found a body in the garden, because we live in a very rural place. The lane was blocked with cars. There was a lovely orderly queue of nice young reporters all wanting to ask me about Handforth. And I'm thinking, what the hell happened in Handforth? What have I missed? Because the actual meeting took place back in December, and now we're in February. So the meeting with Handforth was about the last thing on my mind. And all I could think of was, did I miss something? That kind of thought that goes through your head with something like, that's how my mind works anyway. Did Stuart come in his underwear and give me a cup of tea partway through the meeting? I just missed that or something. Because I say I'd well and truly.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, here we go. We're back again. Hello?
That
Hello, we're back again.
that was my fault. It periodically drops out. It didn't happen a lot, but yeah, that was my fault.
Sorry, no worries, no worries. We're still rolling, we're still recording. Yeah, it's all good now. Oh, you stuck again. Oh. Oh no. Hello?
Yeah, that's weird.
Oh, yeah, here you go, you're back again.
quite gone. I was somewhere in the ether, I think.
Yeah, you're stuck in between.
Yeah, so yeah, that's how it started, and every kind of week thereafter was around that. I can't believe this has lasted another week. The other thing is, I'm absolutely obsessed with Twitter followers. I feel like they're a little collection, and I need another one. So that I've gone from I think I must have had 2 followers at some point to now I've got nearly 40,000. And it's kind of like, but couldn't a few more just join? And then I'd be really on 40,000. And Stuart, my husband, says to me, well, what are you going to do when you hit 40,000? I said, well, then I'm going to fret about why it's not 45.
And then 50,000 and 100,000.
What I think.
Yeah, that's what Josh thinks.
I love it when I get that feel of approval.
Yeah, Josh likes it each time he gets a new follower because it's like that seal of approval, almost that little yeah.
And it's quite funny. I try to find out what it is they want.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what do I mean? This is a completely different conversation. Sorry, I'm going off on a track. You know, what do my followers want from me? You know, do they want to hear about local government? Do they want to hear my sparkling wit? Do they want my lifestyle tips? You know, fashion. You know, whatever. And it's kind of like you put something out there and think, you know, nobody would be interested in that.
Yeah.
And it suddenly seems to. I mean, on New Year's Eve, I posted what I would call a fridge magnet post. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. 40,000 likes. You know? And something else that you think is really important that people should, you know, be interested in. 10.
Yeah.
No?
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, what I want to put out in
Yeah, that's what Josh finds when he puts out an interview that he's done with somebody. It's just trying to figure out why do they like it, why have they read it, or you know, why aren't they reading it, and so on and so forth. You know, trying to figure out the actual fan base, aren't you?
But I guess if we, then we would be really wealthy.
Yeah. Oh, you've gone again. Your pictures. Oh, there you go. You're back again.
I was looking to see if I'd lost connection, but I haven't lost connection.
No.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I could see that you'd frozen, so I presumed I must have as well. Yeah, if we can work out the secret to that, I think, you know, there you are. You know, millions will be heading our way.
Exactly. Parish councils are notoriously perceived to be very twee and possibly outdated in TV comedies such as The Vicar of Dibley. Despite the high-profile fallout from the video, which resulted in a handful of resignations, how do you think this has helped improve the perceived image of parish councils all over Britain?
People are starting to notice them. Never mind what the image is. Let's get an image, and then we can worry about crafting it and making it into something else. I've been involved in local councils for 25 years, and I'm horrified at the lack of knowledge that people have of them. You know, you'll say to some, do you have a parish council in your area? Well, I don't know. Why don't you know? You know, it's not that I'm a political creature. I'm not. My views on politics I would be equally abusive of most of the parties. But certainly at local level, you know, when you have, you talk about them potentially being outdated, you have a tool there that is so underused. I mean, the way I think of it is that, particularly since I went back to work, feels like hundreds of years ago after I had the children, I've always been time poor. So I don't get involved in community events. It's not my thing anyway. But my excuse is I'm time poor. But because both my husband and I have worked, we have money. I don't say we've got sheds load of money, but we've got money. And a parish council enables everyone, both the people who have money and the people who haven't, who have other things that they can contribute, to make the community work. So mug me for my money, and then I feel better about the fact that I am contributing to local services that we can all enjoy. But don't ask me to bake a bloody cake. And there's lots of people who are in that position, you know, young professionals, for example, you know, don't necessarily want to spend time, you know, manning the cake stall, obsessed with cakes, obviously, or, you know, any of the things that you do to raise money locally, you know, and that's great. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but by raising a local tax, a local precept, which is what your parish council does, it means everyone can contribute, not just the people who have time, my example, to bake the cake.
Yeah.
We're not recognising that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, I guess for me, it's kind of like what I've tried to do this year. It just kind of pushed this to anyone who will listen, because I suppose what you eventually recognise is that although I feel I'm constantly saying the same thing, you're always reaching a slightly different audience. So you do have to keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. And again, the other thing is that because of the I don't know, notoriety, whatever you want to call it, I get invited to more things. So people invite me to address different audiences. And there's another group of people that I haven't had the opportunity to talk to about parish council, chipping away at it.
Yeah. During the pandemic, we've all been forced to adapt to alternative ways of interacting with people. In your opinion, how has video conferencing created its own social discourse, which may not be appropriate in a face-to-face environment?
That may not be appropriate in a right. So it's a kind of question. Do I think that virtual meetings kind of allow worse behaviour?
Yeah.
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 No. I actually think it's created a better and more controllable environment.
Okay.
So sometimes that, I mean, I've been asked that question before. I don't mean that to sound like try harder. Ask me when I've not been asked before. But I've been asked that question in a different way before, and it was kind of like, did I feel that it was because it was a virtual meeting that they were as awful as they were? No, they are awful. And they would have been awful in a face-to-face meeting. And in a face-to-face meeting, I would have had nothing with which to defend myself.
Yeah.
So I think that you do get more power, if you like, with a virtual meeting. One of the things that I do find, though, is that it kind of started off feeling really awkward when we were doing these virtual meetings. And then we'd set out kind of like the rules for the meeting, that kind of thing, and it all felt really awkward. You know, you're going to be mute, switch off your microphones, you know, yes, no, Bernard, you are on mute, that's the first one tonight. You know, that kind of thing. It all felt really uncomfortable. But I think we've got more comfortable with it, and we are more likely to be setting rules that we agree with, you know, that the group agree, making it easier for the person to chair it. Because I always think it's much easier to enforce somebody else's rules than it is to enforce your own. I want you to behave in this way. It's much harder to present than we've agreed, and I'm just now enforcing your rules.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So do you think they would have spoken to you in that aggressive way if it was an in-person meeting?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, nothing would have changed. It would have been the same temperament. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly Alan's iPad. I mean, I think it was quite interesting. The reporters that after a while we started to get on quite well with them, and find out lots of gossip from them. Found that when they'd gone round to interview the others, it were literally chased down the driveway by the mother. So I think they're a style family.
So you've just written a book, You Do Have the Authority Here. In your opinion, how difficult is it to maintain authority when faced with extremely passionate and opinionated figures? And what tips would you give to anyone who is facing issues with getting their voice heard? And what do you hope to achieve from the reaction to the book?
All great questions, and all answered by you need to buy the book.
I thought that might be the answer.
But I do dedicate a chapter to kind of like getting your voice heard. And I guess that, I suppose because of the day job that I do, which is about, sort of solving problems that occur with parish councils. Most of it, I mean, some of it's giving them information, but a lot of it is problem solving. One of the things I've learned painfully over a long period of time is it is much easier to change yourself than it is to change other people, if indeed it's even possible to change other people. So a lot of what I talk about is about how you can change yourself to give yourself better outcomes, basically. And I know sometimes that won't sit comfortably with people, because sometimes it does sound a little bit like saying to the victim, you must change. But, do you want to win the battle, or do you want to just make a point? Because if you really want to win this battle, then it isn't about point scoring. And some of these you have got to let go. And for me, having your voice heard is about not having your voice heard on every single thing. It's like, I say, when you go into a meeting, you might have 15 things on the agenda. Now, you may be the really sad kind of person who is passionately interested in all 15 items. The likelihood is you're not. So pick what you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So that, if I go to a meeting, and in fact, if you watch the rest of that meeting, you find that I say very little. That there's nothing for me to say. They don't need me to, they don't need me to contribute. So it's about making sure that when you speak, you have something important to say.
Yeah.
Not just that I have to speak on every item, because I mean, we've all done it. That person who, they put their hand up to speak in you. Yes, Bernard. Lovely to hear from you again, Bernard.
And a lot of the time it's what you don't say which is actually significant.
The other thing is that people run out of steam. When it's coming up to that one item that you're really keen on speaking on, and you're absolutely desperate to get your points across. If you just sat there for a moment or two saying nothing, the others would run out of steam before you're then trying to make it. So again, a lot of it is about what you can do for yourself. Because, like I say, it's easier to change how you interact with people than it is to make other people change.
In the last few months, you've become a bit of a celebrity yourself, appearing everywhere from the Big Fat Quiz of the Year to the Jeremy Vine Show. In your opinion, to what extent is your fame a byproduct of the extraordinary times that we're living through?
It must be, because I am incredibly ordinary and have managed to exist on this earth for 62 years without anybody ever really noticing me. So something changed, and it was not me.
What was the most profound in
If you can answer this, What's the most bizarre thing you've been asked to do over the last few months, or what's the weirdest request?
None of them seem terribly weird now. That's probably because they're just so varied. Gosh, talking about two different things. So talking about, what members of the public might ask me to do, as opposed to what, businesses and organisations and things might ask me to do. I'm often surprised at how the public relate to you. So that, you'll have someone, I had somebody write to me today telling me how they are an A-level student in politics, could they have an autograph, that kind of thing, telling me a little bit about themselves. And it's written in a very polite, I'm sorry to bother you, thank you for taking the time to read this, that kind of thing. Lovely. So replied to him. And then others that kind of approach you with a sense of entitlement. Would you endorse our care home? Well, I haven't actually stayed in your care home. I'm managing on my own, with Stuart. Thinking, why would I?
What are they trying to say?
I thought that was, and I just replied saying, I'm sorry, I don't know your care home, so it would be appropriate for me. Another one was a garden centre that said, would you endorse our products, please? Well, I don't know what your products are like. They might be really good or they might be rubbish. Why don't you send me something? Never heard back from them. It's kind of like that strange, it's like two different types of reaction. One that kind of feels that there's an ownership of you in some way, and the other where they really treat you like princess, which is also nice. In terms of businesses, I suppose the oddest thing I've been asked to do was to get made up with prosthetics and etc. As one of the Walking Dead. The video is out there. It's an advert for when the star on the Disney Plus channel got series 1 to 10 of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And they ran a competition whereby if you won the competition, then a professional zombie, yes, there is such a thing, would turn up at your Zoom meeting and take your place, so that you could effectively go and do something more interesting. And that was out of this world, literally. There was a crew of 10 turned up, 2 professional zombies to take part in the little bit of filming we did. It was headshots only. It wasn't, I didn't have to run across the field chased by zombies. And then we had to start early because in the afternoon I was then back to being Jackie, doing a training session online for 20 counsellors. And I suppose for me that was that day sticks out in my mind as being the most I suppose where both lives kind of butted up to each other in the one day. It's kind of like you're there doing this presentation to counsellors about, I think it was chairmanship or something. Still picking out bits of plaster and stuff from your hair. I think it was real, but it wasn't real. And I suppose that's what I meant when we started talking earlier about the processing time. Because there's never really, other than perhaps talking to yourselves, that opportunity to process it. How did it feel?
Yeah.
The other thing is that everyone just assumes you can do this.
Yeah. And you'll just be willing to do anything, and you're just capable of anything.
But it's not so much the willingness, it's the capable.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned the Jimmy Carr's Christmas quiz. And that was, it wasn't live, it was recorded, but there was a live audience. And then you have a script told where to stand, what camera to look at. But what I've found is, particularly with comedians, they never stick to the script. So although I look at the script and get a kind of feel for where it's going, I don't learn it, as in by rote, if you like. Because as soon as you go on, they go off script. So if you're desperately trying to find where you are in the script now, forget it. So you're now there, cameras live, really bright studio, lots of people in the audience. And you just have to react to whatever comes next. Because it certainly wasn't what we had on the script.
Especially when you have someone like Jimmy Carr stood right next to you. You just got to be ready and just, I suppose you're watching his every move every second of the time you're there.
Well, none of that was planned.
Yeah.
Where he gives me the podium.
Yeah.
That was not in the script at all.
Yeah.
The questions that were asked from the panel, none of that was scripted.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, then you've got people like Jonathan Ross who like to go off on a tangent anyway and sort of mix it up, don't you?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But when I was standing in the wings waiting to go on, I said to the producer, have you literally had anybody get to this point and go, I just can't do this? She said, no, but it's been close.
So we touched upon it earlier before we started recording, but you're trying your hand at a bit of live comedy at the Bedford in Balham on the 6th of February. How did this come about and what can we expect?
Oh, goodness. How did it come about? I am a sucker for a nice young man. I mean that in the nice... So, nice young man called Giles from Gideon Comedy contacts me, and it starts with a podcast and says, would I like to do a podcast? I have no idea what a podcast is. We recorded 6 episodes before I realised that it was audio only. I thought it was video.
Yeah.
And there's one where, oh God, who is it? I'm awful at names. Comedian. Oh gosh, can't think of his name. It'll come to me like that kind of like Tourette's moment where it just pops straight into your head. And he's describing something he's holding, and I'm thinking, it's going to be a lot of trouble to describe. See what he's got, and that's, then it kind of twigged. I was discussing it with Giles afterwards. Yes, because it's audio only. You're describing it for the audience. So, anyway, so did several podcasts. They were huge fun, and the format would be people on my Twitter account would send in questions. Some of them were a little bit, serious. Most of them were kind of very light-hearted, and we would then discuss them with the guest. And Giles said, "What about doing it as a live show?" And I can't for the life of me remember why I said yes. So in effect, the way I'm selling it to myself is it's a bit like the podcast. So we'll be round a table. We'll keep the format a little like you'd expect a council meeting to be, and we will be trying to answer life's challenging questions. I think the example I use is it ever acceptable to wear sandals with socks? These questions need bottoming out.
Yeah, they do. They do. That is right at the top of the list. Have you been approached by any film directors or producers to transform your story into a film? And if so, have you had any ideas of who you would like to portray yourself?
Well, why can't I portray myself? I would be really good at being me. No, I haven't. But I think if I was going to have someone play me, Helen Mirren, yeah.
Oh yeah, strong shout. Yeah, strong choice.
Yeah. You could oh,
Yeah, you can make it an all-star cast. You could cast the rest of the Zoom call. Who else would be in those sort of roles?
Wow, that would be really interesting, wouldn't it? But I am actually rubbish at names. So, do you think that possibly Tom Cruise for Alan's iPad? And I know Tom Cruise isn't kind of like bike, got that energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That frantic energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't implying he was an angry man. I don't know if he is or not, but yeah, I think that could be good.
I'm sure it'll be available. I'm sure we could talk to Tom. Yeah, it could be quite an easy job because he could just pre-record his bits at home, and it could just be edited as a Zoom call. Yeah.
In fact, I think there is actually going to come a point where none of us ever need to leave our homes again.
Yeah.
I've just done a Panto run in Crewe without leaving the house.
All right. Did you appear on the screen in the background, or yeah?
Except that you wouldn't know it was very well done. So it's as if it's Sleeping Beauty, and they've rung me up to consult me on something. So they've got a Zoom link, and I appear on the Zoom link, and the actors are interacting with the Zoom link as if it was in real time. Pretty cool.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I mean, you can put together a whole film like that. All we just need are really good editors.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack Whitehall.
What, on the podcast?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jack Whitehall.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
And he was hilarious, but I did get the feeling that he really toned it down, like he was doing a podcast with his mum.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He's still really racy, but it still kind of felt that he, kind of being a bit respectful.
Keeping it at a certain level. Yeah. Looking back at your rise to fame, what's been the standout moment so far?
Doing the Archers was great fun. And that did kind of feel like an honour. And then I did. I was invited to the local government chronicle. They have an annual awards evening, and they invited me to this awards evening. My God, it was huge. I think there was 1,500 there. Lovely hotel in London. And when I got up on the stage, I got a standing ovation. I was just giving out one of the awards. I was really because, of course, these are people who are from local government.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and it's such a kind of prestigious event that I would never have been invited to it 2
what they hope to attain.
Yeah, but they probably look at you as like a hero or a bastion of like what they hope to achieve.
And also, sadly, I think that the kind of behaviour that you saw there is something that many officers have come across.
Yeah.
About. I was in a really kind of fortunate place. Fortunate's not the right word. I don't work for that council. They don't pay my wages. So it wasn't the same as standing up to your own boss. So yeah. I didn't have a lot to lose. And I think that if you're in a work situation like that, and these are your employers, then that's, well, they'd suspended the clerk, of course. Then that's a very different game. So I'm very mindful of that. That it, you know, I was in a unique position in that regard.
Yeah. And finally, what's next for Jackie Weaver?
We'll get through February. I don't know. I mean, I've always assumed that tomorrow nobody will be interested. You know, I kind of keep checking my Twitter numbers just to see if I'm still popular. And you know, if suddenly 30,000 people will desert me, I think I'll have to get the wine out. But it's kind of, my diary's already filling up with people asking me if I'll speak at events, that kind of thing. I've got a presentation later this month talking to the northern branch of the National Union of Journalists. All sorts of people kind of feel they have a connection with me. I think in terms of that, being an officer, being kind of perceived as somebody who works within a rule book, you know, sort of a governance framework, if you like. So I get adopted by quite a few organisations that you wouldn't automatically think of as having, you know, resonance with the town and parish councils. So I do a lot with schools and the new academies, that kind of thing. Again, looking at talking with their governors and their boards, etc., about the importance of, you know, the importance of the role, but also the need to sort of recognise that, you know, you don't actually run the show. So it's putting that kind of tactfully to people in a way that they, you know, they feel both valued, but don't feel that actually the organisation works for them. And so many of these things, actually, once you start to get into them, begin to sound like the same kind of issues that come up with local councils. You know, that often surprises me. You start off thinking, well, I don't see the connection here. And then actually, as you start to talk, some of the issues they face, the wording is different, the phraseology is different, but actually the issue is the same.
Yeah.
I suppose, at the end of the day, it all boils down to personal relationships.
Yeah. Definitely.
That was great, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to end. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
It's been fun. It's been good.